I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com, and today we're going to replace hideous and ugly with beautiful. These are the driven TT rear sets, and we're going to put them on our 2017 STG Kawasaki Z125 PRO. Oh, we've got a whole box of bling from my man over at Driven. We're going to be installing on the Z125. We're going to open up right now with the rear sets, his TT rear sets. These are 4-position adjustable. You can go from 0, right? You can move the pegs up and back a little bit, up and back there, and then the most extreme point here. Very basic install. We'll start by talking about the brake side. That's where I'm going to begin. Installing this and looking at what we have here on the stock motorcycle, you are going to not be able to reuse your return spring for the rear brake, not a big deal, and you're also going to lose up front the functionality of the brake light switch. Those are all right here, and there is no provision with these to reuse those. That said, for most people, that's not a concern at all. I would be in that group of most people where I wouldn't really worry about that typically. With this bike, we're going to do things a little bit different. Down the road, I'm going to install a banjo switch back here, a pressure switch, so I can get my brake light function back by, instead of using the switch, actually using that pressure sensitive banjo. Okay, so look for that. The other thing that I would like to do is install at some point, I believe, and I got to do a little research, I could put a return spring in here. There's a couple of different manufacturers that offer those, so we'll do a little video showing you how to do that if you really want to have all that functionality. And then lastly, I think with a little bit of creativity, and you'd have to also not have an aversion to drilling a little hole in this lever, you could actually utilize the stock brake light switch. I'm thinking a little bit of safety wire and the stock spring. We'll cover that a little bit more as we go through this install. So stay tuned if you want to see the other stuff down the road. Cool. If you don't, well, then don't look for it. Very basic project here, okay? The tools that I've got out to work on the brake side as of right now are a flat-bladed screwdriver. We've got a 5mm T6, 4. I've got a 3/8 ratchet. Got a T-handle, a 12mm socket, got a pair of side cutters, Phillips screwdriver, and a razor blade to open the packaging. Real simple stuff. We're going to begin by removing this panel here, okay? This panel is in the way of the factory rear set. The first step is going to be to remove the stock seat, and to do that you need to stick your key into that lock cylinder right down there, and we're going to go ahead and turn it, release the seat. All right, once you have the seat off, you're going to see you have a fastener here. That's a Phillips. My Phillips screwdriver, just going to go ahead and take that bad boy out. You will be reusing that. Come down here by the passenger foot peg, which will be retained. Okay, we will still have the functionality of these. We got a 4mm Allen head fastener there. I'm going to do a little more research as well, and I'm going to find a set of black aftermarket pegs that I can replace these with, because it's going to look a little out of place with those bitchin' TT rear sets on there in black. So with a little research, I'm sure I can come up with something. Now, there's a couple of like Christmas tree clips. Okay, you want to pull outward on the panel here, like so, and release those. And one more up front. Off it comes just like that. Okay, so now we have all the access that we're going to need to work on the bike. Side cutters. I'm going to use these just to slide that return spring off like so. And you can see here, right, they are actually using that return spring as the catch for the spring that actuates the rear brake light. Go ahead and take that off. Now we've got two 12mm fasteners here. break these loose, take the assembly off. Those bolts will not be reused, okay? We have new ones that have come with the TT rear set kit, which we will be using. Okay, now got a cotter pin back here. Spread the ears of this out. And okay, push that through. You should be able to reuse this. All right, I was able to bend that pretty easily and reuse it, so go ahead and take that out. You got your washer here and the pivot. Push the pin through, make sure you retain the washer. And there you have it. Rear set is removed. Okay, now we're ready to install the rear set on the bike. First thing that I want to do is just going to double check the torque for all the pieces that are already assembled. The directions do suggest using Loctite. I'm going to pass on that. The reason behind that is, as you guys know, it's a project bike. It's all going to be taken apart again. So that is the reason I will not be using Loctite. Definitely want to check the torque on that brake lever mount. Okay, good to go there. Now, foot peg. Where do we want to locate that, right? That's definitely something you want to take a minute here and make sure that you like the way you have the foot peg rotated so it looks good, feels good when you're riding the motorcycle, okay? Don't want to have it be a distraction and then have to take the thing back apart or something down the road. So what I'm going to do right now is mock it up a little bit, and I want to get an idea of how that's all going to come together. Like so. And see right here that is about the angle that's going to need to be at. Okay, I'm going to kind of eyeball that and take the rear set back off, and I'm going to go ahead and snug this up. You could always use, there is room to get inside there, a Allen. You have a 90-degree Allen, so you'd be able to do that. Loctite would be beneficial here. I wouldn't really commit to that until you've ridden the bike and you make sure that you like the position that you have it located in. So that way if you need to take it apart down the road, it's not going to be problematic. Check that out. And that's what I was looking for. I wanted it rotated forward just a little bit. I've got some good torque on there now, so feel pretty good about that. We're going to take a little bit of grease and lubricate this pin, and then complete the installation on the brake side. Just a little bit of standard grease here, really nothing out of the ordinary. Anytime you have a pivot point like that, it's just not a bad idea to have a little bit of lubrication on it. You don't need to get crazy, just a little bit. I'm going to slide this all together before I actually physically mount the rear set. Reuse that cotter pin. Like I said before, you should easily be able to save this. All right, slide that through like so. And once you have that in position, turn it here just a little bit. Push it through. And go ahead and open it back up and wrap it around the pivot pin. Okay, once you've got that done, now we're ready for the mount bolts. Another good place to use Loctite would be here, you know, of course, and the foot peg. But once again, I probably wouldn't do any of that until you've landed on the riding position that best suits you. You know, got all your adjustments dialed in, and then go ahead and pull it back apart real quick and use Loctite on reassembly. There are torque specs that are included with the instructions. If you like to use a torque wrench, go ahead and follow those. I'm just going to roll with the T-handle here. Okay, now make sure everything's moving freely. Reach in here and I'm going to pull that spring out. Okay, I want to keep that. Like I said, I got an idea that I think I could do a little work around here and retain the functionality without any additional installation. And now we're ready to put our closeout panel back on. Okay, this rear set is going to change this just a little bit. A little more difficult to get that push pin lined up, and it's definitely changed our tolerance here a little bit. I'm actually going to remove the heel guard real quick. I think that doing that is going to help me put that panel back on. There's a push pin right behind that. So if I get this out of the way. That might help with the clearance a little bit. Okay, now that I have that heel guard off, it's going to allow me to get that pin in that grommet, right? Make sure I don't break it, so I'm going to kind of put a little downward pressure on it and help me find the spot. In that goes. And finish this off up here. Make sure you get each one of these reinstalled. We've got another one back here. Now we'll put our Allen head back in. Just behind the passenger peg here. Definitely got to come up with something there. That's not going to look great, so we'll take care of that shortly. The heel guard back on. Once again, Loctite here, you know, would be a good call. And once I get this on, we'll be ready to go over and rock out the other side. The shift side definitely needs some help. The stock rear set, the shifter, the rod for the shifter, it does not feel very precise, let me say that. And I think that, you know, more solid rear set kit is going to go a long way for improving the feel of the shifter. All right, there we go on the brake side. We have ugly. Remove, this thing's heavy too. And there you go, there's your driven TT kit installed. Okay, shift side, always a little bit easier, right? We've done this a number of times now, and the brake side typically presents more challenges than this side will, so I'm gonna pull that boot back. I mean, you can see how basic the design of these rear sets is from the factory, because the shift knuckle literally has a rod that is bent and passes through it, and there's a cotter pin on the back side. So this is very, very basic, and Actually, my bike, this rod already looks like it's bent or something. I don't know. Like I said, not very positive shift action here. So we're going to open up by removing these two 12s. I did add a couple of tools to the mix. That was two 10mm wrenches. I'm going to need those to make the adjustment. To the shifter after we get it installed. And see if I can get this apart without removing everything. There's, just like we had on the other side, there's a cotter pin right there, so we're going to need to spread that back out. You will not need to reuse this because we are replacing this with an actual Heim joint, and that in itself should go a long way towards really improving the action of the shifter. See the difference here. That is some seriously low-tech hardware. There's a bunch of plain stuff in that, so there we go. Once again, heavy and ugly. Okay, first thing I want to do is I want to get an idea of where that foot peg is going to ride. Okay, very similar to what we did the other side. That's the wrong fastener there. Let's go ahead and slide a couple fasteners in real quick. Just see where this lands so we can get this foot peg all dialed in real nice right from Jump Street. And this has a spacer on this side, so I'm not going to put that in there right now. Let me see this rear set. It's going to end up basically square to the bike, right? The markings, so we're going to use this hole. Very easy to do that. You can see this is all going to be square, so easy for the foot peg. Make sure you put it in the same hole. Also, they do recommend the use of Loctite and a torque wrench. Go ahead and put that in there, same. Rotated forward just a tickle to match what I did on the other side. And hold the peg and snug up the fastener. Yep, I like that. That'll work out well. Now, let's talk about shift pattern, okay? This rear set kit is going to allow you to do standard or GP shift. And you need to decide now which one would you prefer to use. So, comparing this to the factory kit, you can see that this bike was standard shift, okay? And it had the shift rod located under. It came from the factory here from Driven. On top, this would give us GP shifting, where you would push down, right, for an upshift. I'm going to move that. I'm going to keep this thing standard. Reason behind that is my kid's riding the bike, and I would feel better not switching up the shift pattern on him and watching him blow the thing up. Loctite would be a good call here for sure. But once again, because of the whole project bike gig, we don't really need to do that. This is going to come apart again, so I'll make sure I've got good torque. Got that relocated. I'm going to thread in the nut. And we'll get the shift rod assembled. And what I'm going to do here is I want to make sure that I've got each of the heim joints in there, you know. Just kind of go like that. Keep it as even as I can. Like so. All right, and now ready to bring this over and install it on the bike. Here is the supplied hardware. And let's not forget the spacer bracket. Slide the bracket in place along with the hardware. Now I'm going to take a quick look at the shifter and just kind of get an idea for how everything's going to run here. Looks like that'll all line up quite nicely. Remember, double check all the fasteners on these, even the ones that were from the factory already installed. After you've got your rear set kit on, you make your adjustments, you know, wearing your riding shoes. It's funny I'm saying that, and this is basically a mini bike. Once you get it all dialed in, you want to put your Loctite and everything in there, of course, if you didn't use it right out of the gate. And then at about 500 miles, you know, a couple months, whatever it might be, just double check the torque of the fasteners to make sure that you don't have something that's come loose. Okay, now let's go ahead and get this shift rod set. And supplied hardware here. I'm going to go ahead and drop that down just a little bit. It'll be really easy to adjust this down the road, so not really of concern. That nut back there would definitely be a great place to use a little Loctite. Get a 10 mil wrench here. And snug that up. Yeah, that's a sizable difference as compared to the way the stock stuff felt. And I don't even have the shift rod itself tight. Kind of look at my... Feel like I want to start right there. And go ahead and tighten up our jam nuts. Need two 10 mil wrenches for this. One to hold the rod itself, and then of course the other to snug up the nut. Show you a little trick here that I like to use, and that would be on mini bikes and full-size bikes, of course. I want to make sure that as I snug this up, right, that the heim joints end up being square and they don't end up rotated, opposing each other, right? I want them both to be on the same plane so that it's as fluid as possible with as little resistance. So what I'm doing is, in the same direction that I need to tighten the nut, I'm going to push both the heim joints in that direction so they're already there, okay? And then go ahead and snug the other nut. Like so. They look good and straight. And let's start off here obviously with standard shift. Don't want to go freaking max out and blowing up the 125. I'm going to go ahead and put some tools away, and then we'll close this video out. Okay, there we go. Rear sets are on the bike. This is a relatively simple project. One thing you can definitely take away from this is anytime you're installing aftermarket components like this, right? We have customers, riders that have the expectation that boom, everything's going to fly on there and you don't have to deal with anything, it's going to be perfect. That's typically not the case. I mean, anytime you get into a project like this, you know, expect maybe a little bit of the unexpected. Things like the brake light switch, right? There are different ways to manage that, and it also depends on what your expectations are. Do you want to continue to reuse the brake switch for the rear brake? For some people, that's completely unimportant, right? It's irrelevant to them because you still got the brake light switch up here at the master cylinder. So, and especially on any road bike, I'm way more active on the front brake than I ever would be the rear brake. You know, you always have your hands on the controls. So, you know, decide what you want to do with that. I'm going to show you a couple of different options as we move forward with this project, so stay tuned for that. And now remember, take your time, dial all this in. We've got adjustable toe pegs. I'm able to move those back if I want to shorten the pedal length. I'm able to leave them where they are if I want to leave them longer. We can move the foot pegs around on both sides, 4-position adjustable. The way Driven has these set up, okay, you can see here, this is the 0 point, right? And that would be in reference to stock, and then the other points would be the amount in millimeters that it's moving it, relocating it to change the ergonomics of the position. You know, this certainly isn't, you know, a R1M, okay? Let's be realistic. You know, we're putting a super sweet rear set on a mini bike, and I'm actually gonna put a bunch of great parts on this thing and make it super awesome, and probably double the cost of the bike at the end of the day, but hey man, that's what toys are for. I'm Brian Van, sportbiketrackgear.com.